What if your own child treated you like an embarrassment, refused to invite you to their wedding, and said, "You don't fit in, you're embarrassing"? A mother gave everything for her son, her time, her dreams, her entire life. In return, rejection, disrespect, and cold silence. But then, she quietly planned the perfect revenge. No screaming, no drama, just cold, calculated moves that pulled everything apart, brick by brick. On the wedding day, it all came crashing down. The bride walked out, the guests watched in shock, and the groom was left standing alone while his perfect world burned. This is the story of a mother's silent strength, the kind that builds empires with love and destroys them when betrayed. Watch till the end. You'll feel that sweet justice in your soul. My name is Alara Voss. For as long as I can remember, I've been the kind of woman who gives until there's nothing left to give. I was 22 when Damien came into this world, screaming and red-faced in a hospital room that smelled of bleach and fear. His father was already gone by then, packed a bag one night while I was at work, and never came back. I didn't cry until 3 days later, when the reality sank in that it was just the two of us now. From that moment on, Damien became my entire universe. I worked doubles at the diner on Halsted Street, grease clinging to my skin long after my shift ended, then cleaned offices downtown until the early hours. My hands cracked from bleach, my back ached from scrubbing floors, but every extra dollar went into his future. New shoes when his toes poked through the old ones, books from the library sale so he'd never feel poor, piano lessons I paid for by skipping my own meals. I told myself it was temporary, that one day he'd look at me and know exactly what I'd sacrificed. And for a long time, he did. Damien was bright, dangerously bright. Teachers called him gifted. He skipped a grade, won science fairs, charmed everyone with that crooked smile I used to kiss every night before bed. When he got into Northwestern on a partial scholarship, I cried in the parking lot of the post office after mailing the deposit check. I took out loans in my name to cover the rest, because how could I let money stand in the way of his dreams? He graduated top of his class, landed a job at a finance firm in New York, and suddenly my little boy was wearing tailored suits and talking about portfolio diversification over Sunday phone calls. I didn't understand half of it, but I beamed every time he said my name with pride in his voice. "Mom, none of this would have happened without you." Those words were oxygen. Then he met Isabella Hawthorne. She came from a world I only knew from magazines, summer houses in the Hamptons, charity galas, last names that opened doors before you even knocked. The first time Damien brought her home for Thanksgiving, I spent 3 days cleaning a house that was already spotless. I made my grandmother's rosemary lamb, set the table with the good dishes I'd been saving for a special occasion. Isabella smiled politely, complimented the food, but her eyes kept drifting to the faded wallpaper, the scuff marks on the floor I couldn't quite buff out. Damien noticed too. I saw it in the way he flinched when I laughed too loudly at one of my own stories. After that visit, things shifted, slowly, painfully. Our weekly calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. When I asked about his day, he'd give short answers. "Busy, Mom." If I pressed, his tone sharpened. "I've got a meeting in 5." I started timing my calls for Sunday evenings, thinking that would be safer. Most went to voicemail. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up. They build their own lives. I kept sending care packages, his favorite oatmeal raisin cookies, a scarf I knitted during quiet nights. Some came back unopened, returned to sender stamped in red. Then came the phone call that broke something inside me. It was a gray Tuesday in April. Rain tapped against my kitchen window as I stirred soup on the stove. My phone buzzed on the counter, Damien's name lighting up the screen. My heart lifted the way it always did. "Hey, sweetheart," I answered, wiping my hands on my apron. There was a pause. Then, "Mom, Isabella and I are getting married." The spoon slipped from my fingers and clattered against the pot. Joy flooded me so fast I had to grip the counter to stay upright. "Oh, honey, oh my God, that's wonderful. When? Where? Tell me everything." Another pause, longer this time. "It's June 15th, he said, voice flat, "at the Hawthorne estate in Southampton. But listen, it's going to be small, very intimate. Isabella's family is particular about the guest list." The rain outside seemed louder suddenly. My throat tightened. "Small how?" "Mom," he sighed, his voice the way he used to when I asked him to take out the trash. "You're not invited." The words didn't register at first. I waited for the laugh, the "just kidding." It never came. "What?" My voice came out small, cracked. "Look, you've done a lot for me, I get it, but this day, it's about starting fresh. The Hawthorns are different, they're circle, and honestly, the way you are sometimes, the stories, the laughing, the everything, it's embarrassing. You wouldn't fit in." Embarrassing. The word landed like a physical blow. My chest caved in, breath leaving me in a rush. I sank into the nearest chair, knees giving out. "Damien," I whispered, "I'm your mother." "Yeah, and I've thanked you a million times, but I don't owe you my wedding or my life. Grow up, Mom. This isn't about you." The line went dead. I sat there for I don't know how long, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to silence. The soup burned on the stove, filling the house with acrid smoke, but I couldn't move. My hands shook so badly, I had to set the phone down before I dropped it. Embarrassing. After everything, every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every dream I buried so he could chase his, I was embarrassing. I don't remember crying, not at first. There was just this hollow ache spreading through my ribs, like something vital had been carved out and left bleeding. Later that night, I stood in his old bedroom. It hadn't changed much. Trophies on the shelf, the faded NASA poster still taped to the wall. I touched the edge of his high school graduation photo on the dresser, me in my best dress, arm around his shoulders, both of us smiling like we'd won the world. Now it felt like a lie. The injustice settled over me like a weight I couldn't shrug off. My own son had looked at everything I'd given him, my youth, my strength, my heart, and decided I wasn't worthy of standing witness to his happiness. And the worst part? There was nothing I could do about it. Or so I thought. The days after that phone call didn't feel real. I moved through my house like someone had turned the volume down on the world. The clock ticked too loudly, the fridge hummed like it was mocking me. Every time I passed the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of a woman I barely recognized. Eyes swollen, skin pale, lips pressed into a thin line that wasn't quite a frown and wasn't quite anything else. I kept waiting for Damien to call back, to say he didn't mean it, to laugh and tell me the invitation was already in the mail. I left my phone on the kitchen counter, volume all the way up, screen facing me while I washed dishes that were already clean. Nothing. Not a text, not an email, just silence. By the end of the first week, the silence had teeth. I tried to act normal, went to the library where I worked part-time shelving books, smiled at patrons, recommended mysteries to the regulars, but inside, shame was eating me alive. How do you tell anyone that your only child called you embarrassing and uninvited you from the biggest day of his life? I couldn't, so I swallowed it, felt it burn all the way down. Mrs. Ellis from next door knocked one afternoon with a tin of her famous lemon bars. She took one look at me and frowned. "Alara, honey, you're gray. Are you sick?" I shook my head, forced a smile that felt like glass. "Just tired, long week." She didn't push, thank God, but her eyes lingered on mine a second too long before she left. I shut the door and leaned against it, chest tight, throat dry. I hated lying. I hated feeling like something to hide. 10 days after the call, I broke. I sent Damien a text. Simple, careful. "Hey, sweetheart, I've been thinking about what you said. I understand you want the day to be perfect. I just want you to know I love you and I'm proud of you. If there's any way I could be there, even just for a quick hug, I'd be so grateful. No drama, I promise." I stared at the screen until it went dark, then stared some more. Hours dragged. I watered plants that didn't need it, folded laundry twice. Finally, at 11:47 p.m., my phone lit up. His reply was 4 words. "Mom, stop. You're clingy." Clingy? My vision blurred. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in both hands like it might bite. Clingy. For wanting to see my son get married? For wanting one day out of 33 years of giving him everything? Anger flickered, hot and sudden, but disbelief smothered it fast. This couldn't be my boy. This had to be Isabella's influence, her polished, perfect world, teaching him to prune away anything that didn't match the aesthetic, including me. I decided to try once more, in person. Mothers and sons fix things face to face, right? I took a Friday off work, drove the 7 hours to New York with a knot in my stomach the size of a fist. I didn't call ahead. I told myself surprise was better, less time for him to build walls. Manhattan hit me like a wall of noise and exhaust. His building was one of those gleaming towers with a doorman in white gloves. I gave my name, Ilara Voss, Damien's mother. The doorman hesitated, then buzzed up. A minute later, he waved me in. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt endless. My palms were damp. I smoothed my dress, nothing fancy, just a simple navy wrap I'd bought for his college graduation. When the doors opened, Damien was already in the hallway, arms crossed, face tight. "Mom, what are you doing here?" His voice was low, clipped. Behind him, the apartment door was cracked open. I could see Isabella on the couch, legs tucked under her, watching us like we were a mildly interesting TV show. "I just wanted to talk," quietly. My throat felt raw. "In person, about the wedding." He stepped fully into the hall and pulled the door almost shut behind him. "You can't just show up like this." "I drove 7 hours, Damien. And that's on you." His eyes flicked down to my dress, my practical shoes, then back up. "Isabella's parents are coming for drinks in an hour. Important people. You being here in that?" He gestured vaguely at me. "It's not the image we're going for right now." The image? My lungs forgot how to work for a second. I felt heat rush to my face, humiliation flooding every inch of me. "I'm your mother," I managed, voice cracking, "not an image problem." He sighed, exasperated, actually exasperated. "Yeah, and right now you're acting like a problem. Go home, Mom. Don't do this again." The apartment door opened wider. Isabella appeared, silk blouse and pearls, smile cool as marble. "Everything okay out here?" Damien turned. "Yeah, Mom was just leaving." Isabella's gaze slid over me, slow, assessing, pitying. "Oh, Mrs. Voss, I didn't realize you were visiting." The pause before visiting said everything. "Perhaps it's best if we keep family matters separate until after the wedding. Emotions are running high." Separate. I looked at my son, waiting for him to correct me, to say, "This is my mom, she's staying for coffee." Instead, he nodded. "Exactly. Thanks for understanding, Mom." Understanding? The elevator dinged open behind me like it had been summoned. I backed into it without thinking, tears burning hot in my eyes. The doors closed on their faces, his impatient, hers politely blank. The drive home was a blur of headlights and silent sobbing. I pulled over twice because I couldn't see through the tears. By the time I stumbled through my front door at 2 a.m., something inside me had hardened just a fraction. Not enough to call it strength yet, but enough to stop the free fall. A few days later, Damien called, not to apologize, not to check on me, just business. "Mom, I need you to sign the deed to the lake cabin over to me. Isabella wants to redo it for summer weekends." I stood in the kitchen, staring at the burnt orange leaves outside the window. The cabin, my parents' old place, the one I'd promised him someday when he was 10, and we spent summers fishing off the dock. "You want the cabin now?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "It's basically mine anyway. You always said—" "I know what I said." I swallowed. "I'll think about it." Silence on his end. Then irritation. "Don't make this difficult. It's just a piece of paper." He hung up. I set the phone down carefully, hands trembling. The resentment that had been simmering since the wedding call finally boiled over. Difficult, clingy, embarrassing, image problem. Every word another cut. I poured myself a glass of water, but my throat was so tight I couldn't drink. Shame and anger twisted together until I couldn't tell them apart. Part of me still wanted to call back, beg, fix this. The other part, the new, raw part, wanted him to feel even a fraction of this ache. I didn't know which side would win, but the wound was deeper now, bleeding, infected, and it wasn't anywhere close to healing. I thought the worst had already happened. I was wrong. After the New York disaster, I told myself I'd give Damien space. No more texts, no surprise visits. I'd wait for him to come around, because surely, deep down, he'd realize what he was throwing away. Mothers and sons don't stay estranged forever, right? That's what I repeated in the quiet moments, like a prayer. But the quiet moments were killing me. 2 months crawled by. Spring turned into early summer. The wedding was 6 weeks away. I'd see couples in the grocery store picking out flowers or tasting cake samples, and my stomach would twist so hard I'd have to leave my cart and walk out. I stopped watching my favorite shows because every commercial seemed to feature a beaming mother of the groom. I started taking the long way home to avoid driving past the bridal boutique downtown. I kept busy, or tried to. I painted the guest room a soft sage green I didn't even like. I reorganized the pantry 3 times. I baked enough cookies to feed the entire neighborhood and left plates on porches without notes. Anything to keep my hands moving so my mind couldn't settle on the ache. But the ache was always there, a constant pressure behind my ribs, a dry catch in my throat every time I thought his name. I decided to write him a letter. Not a text, not a call, a real letter, stationery I bought specially, pale blue with my initials embossed at the top. I sat at the kitchen table late one night, pen in hand, and let everything pour out. I told him about the night he was born, how I held him for the first time, and promised the universe I'd give him everything I had. I reminded him of the summer he broke his arm falling off his bike, and how I carried him 3 blocks to the ER because I couldn't afford a cab. I wrote about the Christmas I worked triple shifts so he could have the PlayStation he'd circled in the catalog. I told him how proud I was of the man he'd become, even if it hurt that I wasn't part of his life anymore. And then I begged, just a little. I don't need to sit at the head table, sweetheart. I don't need to give a speech. I just want to be there, just see you happy, to watch you promise your life to someone. 1 hour, 1 photo, that's all I'm asking. Please don't take this moment from me. I cried while I wrote it. Tears smudged the ink in places. I let them stay. Maybe he'd see them and feel something. I mailed it certified, so I'd know when he received it. 3 days later, the notification came. Delivered. Signed for by D. Voss. I waited. A week passed. Then another. Nothing. Not a word. By then, the pain had turned into something heavier, numbness laced with dread. I stopped jumping when my phone buzzed. I stopped checking the mailbox with hope. And then the envelope arrived. Thick cream paper. Expensive. My name and address typed in elegant font. No return label, but I knew the postmark. Manhattan. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet from a law firm and never heard of. Dear Miss Alara Voss, on behalf of our client, Mr. Damien Voss, we request that you immediately cease all attempts at contact, direct or indirect. Any further communication will be documented and may result in the pursuit of a restraining order. Additionally, Mr. Voss wishes to formalize the severance of certain financial entanglements. Enclosed, please find a demand for repayment of outstanding loans totaling $52,300, principal plus accrued interest, related to his undergraduate education. Payment in full is expected within 30 days. We trust you will comply to avoid further action. There was no note from Damien, no explanation, just the cold, impersonal words of a stranger paid by the hour. I read it 4 times before it sank in. A restraining order. For my own son. My legs gave out. I slid down the kitchen cabinets until I was sitting on the cold tile floor, the letter clutched in my fist. My chest heaved, but no sound came out, just silent, wrenching sobs that hurt my throat. He didn't just not want me at his wedding. He wanted me erased. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the afternoon light to fade into evening. Long enough for the house to grow dark around me. Eventually, I crawled to the living room and curled up under the Afghan I'd made when he was in middle school. My body shook with cold that had nothing to do with temperature. My mind raced in circles, replaying every sacrifice, every moment I'd put him first. And for what? To be treated like a threat? Like a debt to be collected? Like garbage he needed to take out before starting his perfect new life? The final blow came 2 nights later. I couldn't sleep again, so I did something I'd promised myself I wouldn't do. I made a fake Instagram account and searched for Isabella's profile. It was private, but mutual friends had reposted stories. There it was, a screenshot from their wedding planning group chat leaked by someone careless. A photo of the guest list, elegant calligraphy on heavy cardstock. My name wasn't on it. Below the image, Isabella had commented, "Keeping it classy, no drama llamas invited." A string of laughing emojis from people I didn't know, people who'd never met me, people now laughing at me. Drama llama. That's what they thought I was. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My hands trembled so badly, I dropped the phone. It landed face up, the emojis still mocking me in the dark. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not with screaming or throwing things, just a quiet, irreversible break. I picked up the phone, closed the app, and turned it off. Then I walked to the mirror in the hallway and looked at myself. Really looked. Red-rimmed eyes, hollow cheeks, shoulders curved inward like I was trying to take up less space. No more. The self-doubt that screamed for months went silent. In its place, a new voice, low, steady, unfamiliar. He thinks I'm nothing. He thinks I'll just disappear. He's wrong. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but for the first time in months, the ache in my chest shifted. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was fuel, and it was burning. The morning after I saw that drama llama comment, I woke up before the sun. Not with a jolt, not with tears, just awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles in the dark. For the first time in months, my chest didn't feel like it was being crushed. It felt hollow, yes, but hollow can be useful. Hollow leaves room. I got out of bed, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a blank notebook I'd bought years ago and never used. The first page stayed empty for a long time. Then I wrote a single line at the top. He thinks I'm powerless. Let's change that. I didn't know exactly what that meant yet, but saying it, seeing it in my own handwriting, lit something inside me, a small, steady flame. The transformation started quietly. No dramatic declarations, no revenge fantasies screamed into pillows, just deliberate, private steps. First, I stopped waiting for his calls. I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb permanently and only checked messages once a day. The silence I used to dread became armor. When no notification came from Damien, I didn't flinch anymore. I nodded to myself like we'd made an agreement. Next, I started learning. Evenings that used to be spent refreshing his social media became hours at my laptop. I read about family law, shareholder rights, loan agreements. I dug through old files in the attic, dusty folders I hadn't touched since he graduated. There they were, the co-signed student loan documents, the investment agreement from when I'd put $20,000, every penny of my savings, into his first startup idea back when he was 24 and full of big dreams. He paid me back a little over the years, sure, but the shares, those were still in my name. I'd forgotten because he'd asked me to hold them for now while he structured the company. I trusted him. Of course I had. Now I printed everything, highlighted clauses, made copies. My hands didn't shake anymore when I read his signature next to mine. I hired a lawyer, not the fancy Manhattan kind, but a sharp woman named Carla Reyes who practiced in Chicago and had a reputation for being thorough and discreet. We met in her small office downtown. I slid the folder across her desk. "I need to know exactly where I stand," I said. My voice was calm, even. Financially, legally, all of it. She skimmed the documents, eyebrows lifting slightly. "This is significant leverage, Miss Voss. You're a part owner in a company that's done very well." I nodded. "I know. You want to sell, liquidate?" "Not yet," I met her eyes. "I want options, quiet ones." She smiled for the first time. "Then we'll be very quiet." While the legal gears started turning in the background, I watched him. Not in the desperate, aching way I used to. This was different, clinical. I made anonymous accounts on every platform he and Isabella used. I noted patterns, the restaurants they tagged, the investors he name-dropped, the way Isabella's family announcements always coincided with his big wins. I screenshotted everything, saved it in encrypted folders labeled with dates. Outwardly, I was the picture of calm. At the library, colleagues commented on how together I seemed lately. Mrs. Ellis said I had a new glow. I smiled and thanked them. I wore the same simple dresses, tended my garden, waved at neighbors. No one saw the fire. But inside, it burned constantly. I'd catch myself in the mirror sometimes and pause. My posture had changed, shoulders back, chin level. The hollow cheeks had filled out a little. I was eating again, fueling myself for something bigger. My eyes, once red and defeated, now held a focus that almost startled me. Damien called once during that time. I let it ring twice before answering, just to prove to myself I could. "Mom, the cabin deed. I need it signed and notarized by next week. Isabella's designer is ready to start." I poured myself a glass of water while he spoke, listening to the ice clink. When he finished, I took a slow sip. "I've been busy," I said. My tone was pleasant, neutral. "I'll look at it when I have time." Silence on his end. Then a sharp laugh. "Seriously, you're going to play games now?" "I'm not playing anything, Damien. I'm just prioritizing." "Mom, this is ridiculous. It's a cabin. You barely use it." "Maybe I will now." I paused, letting the words settle. "Summer's coming." He exhaled hard, frustration crackling through the phone. "You're being difficult on purpose." I didn't answer, just let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable for him. "Fine," he snapped. "Keep it. We'll buy something better." He hung up. I set the phone down, steady as stone. My heart raced, but not from fear, from satisfaction, a tiny, delicious taste of control. That night, I stood on my back porch watching fireflies blink in the yard. The air smelled like cut grass and impending rain. I breathed it in deep. He still thought I was the old Ilara, the one who apologized for taking up space, who begged for a saps of affection, who would eventually fold because that's what mothers do. He had no idea I was cataloging every slight, every entitlement, every underestimation. He had no idea the outer calm was a mask, and beneath it, the inner fire was growing hotter every day. I wasn't ready to strike yet, but I was preparing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful. I didn't rush the first move. For weeks, I'd been gathering kindling. Documents, screenshots, quiet conversations with Carla, my lawyer. Everything stacked neatly in folders on my desk, labeled and dated. I knew exactly what I had. I also knew exactly what Damien thought I had. Nothing. He still saw me as the woman who would eventually cave, who would sign the cabin deed with an apology text, who would fade politely into the background so his perfect life could stay spotless. That underestimation was my sharpest weapon. The first seed was small, almost gentle, but it was designed to grow. Carla drafted a letter on her firm's letterhead, formal, polite, impossible to ignore. It went out certified mail to Damien's apartment and his office, with copies to the co-signer address on file. My house, of course. The content was simple. a notice of intent to accelerate the remaining private loan I'd given him in 2018, $10,000 for living expenses during his first year in New York. I'd never asked for repayment because he was my son, but it had been documented as a loan, not a gift, at his insistence back then for tax reasons. Interest had accrued. With penalties for non-communication, the balance now sat at $14,872. Payment due in full within 30 days or collections would begin. I read the draft 3 times before approving it. My pulse stayed steady. No shaking hands, no dry throat, just a quiet, cold satisfaction when I imagined him opening it. He called the same day it arrived. I was in the garden pruning roses when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I let it ring 4 times, long enough for him to feel the weight, then answered. "Mom?" His voice was tight, edged with disbelief. "What the hell is this letter?" "Good afternoon, Damien," I said calmly, brushing dirt from my gloves. "How are you?" "Don't play cute. $14,000? Are you serious right now?" "I'm quite serious. It's a loan, sweetheart. You signed the promissory note yourself. I've been patient, but it's time." "This is petty. You're doing this because of the wedding." I snipped a dead bloom from the bush, watched it fall to the soil. "No, I'm doing this because it's overdue. The wedding has nothing to do with it." Silence stretched. I could hear him breathing hard, like he was pacing. "You're trying to punish me," he said finally, voice low. "No, I'm simply enforcing an agreement you made, one you're perfectly capable of honoring given your success." He laughed, but it was brittle. "You need the money that bad. Fine, I'll pay it, but this changes nothing." "I didn't think it would," I said softly. He hung up without another word. 2 days later, the payment hit my account. Wire transfer, full amount, no note attached. I stared at the confirmation email longer than I should have. It wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about the crack. The first visible crack in his certainty that I would always yield. But that was only the opening. The second seed was quieter, more insidious. Years ago, when Damien was desperate to launch his fintech startup, I'd not only loaned him money, I invested $25,000, every cent of my retirement savings at the time, in exchange for a 5% equity stake. He'd drawn up the paperwork himself, eager and grateful, promising I'd never have to worry about money again. The company had taken off, Series A funding, big-name investors, a valuation that made my stake worth low 7 figures, on paper. He'd stopped mentioning it after the first year. I'd let him. Trust does that. Now, I had Carla request updated cap tables and shareholder reports, perfectly legal, as a registered owner. She sent the inquiry not to Damien, but to the company's corporate counsel and the lead investor group. No accusations, no threats, just routine diligence from a long-silent minority shareholder. I didn't need to do anything else. The request alone would raise eyebrows. Questions would follow. Who is Alara Voss? Why haven't we heard from her? Is everything properly documented? Seeds planted. While those took root, I fed one more. An old journalist friend from my diner days, Mark Hensley, had gone on to write for a respected finance blog. We'd stayed loosely in touch. I emailed him from a new address, anonymous but detailed. Subject, potential tip, irregularities at Voss Tech Solutions. I attached redacted scans, expense reports Damien had submitted years ago that I'd quietly paid out of my own pocket to keep the company afloat. Meals listed as client entertainment that were actually groceries for his apartment, a company credit card used for Isabella's shopping before they were even engaged. Nothing criminal on its own, but enough gray to spark curiosity, especially with a tip that the founder's financial history might merit a closer look ahead of a rumored Series B round. Mark replied within hours, "This is juicy. I'll poke around discreetly." I closed the laptop and exhaled. 3 moves, all settle, all traceable back to legitimate rights and concerns, no malice visible on the surface. But together, they would create pressure, doubt, scrutiny, and Damien would feel it. A week later, the first signs appeared. His Instagram stories shifted. No more boastful office shots or champagne toasts. Instead, vague posts about navigating challenges and staying focused amid noise. Isabella's feed went suspiciously quiet. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Not from Damien, from his assistant, voice nervous. "Miss Voss? Mr. Voss asked me to schedule a call with you next week. He said it's important." I smiled at the rosebush in front of me, thorns catching the sunlight. "Tell him I'll check my calendar," I said pleasantly. "I've been quite busy lately." I hung up before she could respond. The hidden win was mine, and the audience could feel it. The power dynamic had shifted, just a fraction. He was reacting, I was not. The game had truly begun, and I was only getting started. The first signs that the seeds were taking root came slowly, like distant thunder you feel in your chest before you hear it. I noticed them in the small things. Damien's social media had always been a highlight reel: sunlit office views, handshakes with investors, captions about crushing it and building empires. But toward the end of May, the posts thinned. The confident grin in his selfies looked a little tighter. The captions turned vague, navigating headwinds, focused on the long game, grateful for my rock at Isabella Hawthorne. Isabella's feed, usually a parade of designer bags and rooftop sunsets, went almost silent. No more stories of wedding dress fittings or venue walkthroughs, just occasional reposts of generic quotes about resilience and true partners. I sat at my kitchen table each morning with coffee, scrolling anonymously, feeling the shift like a change in air pressure before a storm. Then the confusion started showing. Carla forwarded me an email chain, perfectly legal since I was now copied on all shareholder correspondence. The lead investor had replied to her diligence request with questions for Damien. "Can you confirm the cap table is current? We've received an inquiry from a minority holder we weren't previously aware of." Damien's response was professional on the surface, but I could read the strain between the lines. "Of course, happy to update everyone. Minor administrative oversight from early days. Will resolve ASAP." ASAP. He was scrambling. A week later, Mark Hensley, my journalist friend, texted from a burner number. "Your tip panned out. Quiet chats with sources confirm Voss Tech's books are getting a second look. Nothing public yet, but auditors have been brought in early for the Series B prep. Word is, the founder's getting twitchy." Twitchy. I smiled into my coffee. Good. The pressure was building, and Damien was starting to feel it in every direction. He called me on a Tuesday evening, right as I was watering the garden. The sun was low, painting everything gold, and I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. "Mom?" His voice was clipped, controlled, but I heard the edge underneath, like glass about to crack. "Damien, how nice to hear from you." "Cut the pleasantries. What the hell are you doing?" I set the watering can down, wiped my hands on my jeans. "I'm not sure what you mean." "The loan bullshit, the shareholder requests, the whispers I'm hearing. This is you, isn't it?" I stayed silent, let him fill the space. "It is," he said, answering his own question. "Jesus, Mom, I paid the damn loan. What more do you want?" "Nothing," I said calmly. "I'm simply exercising my rights as a lender and investor. Perfectly legal. You taught me to protect my interests, remember?" He laughed, but it was sharp, humorless. "This is revenge, pure and simple." "No, sweetheart, revenge would be loud. This is just consequences." Silence stretched. I could hear him breathing, fast and angry. "You're going to tank everything I've built," he said finally, voice low. "Over a wedding invitation?" My chest tightened for a moment, the old ache flaring, but I breathed through it. "You did that yourself, Damien, the moment you decided I was disposable. You're being insane." "Am I? Or are you just realizing that actions have echoes?" He swore under his breath. "Isabella's family is asking questions now. Investors are spooked. If this falls apart, then maybe," I interrupted softly, "you should have thought about who you were pushing away." He hung up without another word. I stood in the garden a long time after that, watching the last light fade. My hands were steady, my heart was not racing. For the first time, I felt the power balance tip, ever so slightly, in my direction. The paranoia set in soon after. Anonymous accounts started noticing his posts again, but now with questions. Everything okay at Vostek? Heard rumors. Old colleagues liked posts but didn't comment. Engagement dropped. He disabled comments on a few photos. Then came the fight I wasn't supposed to see. One of Isabella's private stories leaked into a mutual friend's repost, someone careless with privacy settings. A video, Damien pacing their apartment, phone to his ear, voice raised. I don't know who's feeding this crap to the press, but it stops now. Isabella in the background, arms crossed, looking less like a supportive fiancé and more like someone reassessing her options. I watched it twice. No satisfaction, just confirmation. The stakes were rising fast. The wedding was now 3 weeks away. Venue deposits paid, invitations out, but whispers were spreading in their circles. Is the groom's company stable? Are there family issues? The Hawthorns, ever image-conscious, were reportedly concerned. Damien hired a private investigator, I found out through Carla, who'd been contacted for a routine background check on me. She stonewalled them beautifully, sent back a polite letter reminding them that harassment of a shareholder could have legal ramifications. He was looking for dirt. He found none, because I left no trail. Every move was clean, legitimate, undeniable. I stayed silent through it all. No gloating texts, no cryptic posts, just quiet, calculated presence, like a shadow he couldn't shake. Another call came late one night. This time his voice was different, tired, frayed. Mom, can we talk? In person, please? I was reading in bed, lamplight soft on the pages. I closed the book slowly. About what? I asked. About everything. The company, the wedding, us. Us. The word hung there, heavy with everything unsaid. I let the silence breathe. I'm listening, I said finally. Not over the phone. Please, come to New York. Let me explain. Explain. As if he could explain away the years of dismissal, the lawyer's letter, the drama llama. I felt the old pull, the mother in me wanting to fix, to forgive, to hold him again. But the new me, the one forged in months of silence and fire, was stronger. I'll think about it, I said. That's it? His voice cracked. After everything? Yes, I replied. That's it. I hung up. The pressure was no longer building. It was pressing down, and he was starting to crack beneath it. The calendar flipped to June, and the air turned thick with summer heat. 2 weeks until the wedding. I could feel the pressure radiating across the miles, like heat rising off asphalt. Damien wasn't just twitchy anymore. He was cornered, and cornered animals make mistakes. The systems I'd set in motion were closing in from every direction, quietly, relentlessly, like a noose made of silk. First came the financial trap. Carla filed the formal demand for the full remaining student loan balance, the big one, the $52,300 the lawyer's letter had threatened months earlier. This time, it wasn't a request. It was acceleration under the terms he'd signed himself. Missed updates, change in credit circumstances, material misrepresentation, all triggered by the recent audit flags at his company. The notice gave him 15 days to pay or face collections and credit reporting. He tried to fight it, of course. His attorney fired back a blistering response, calling it harassment, bad faith, retaliation. Carla's reply was a masterpiece. 20 pages of exhibits, every canceled check I'd written, every late-night deposit I'd made to keep him afloat, every promise he'd broken. The lender, now formally me through a trust Carla set up, won the first round. A judge denied his motion to dismiss. The clock kept ticking. Next, the shareholder squeeze. The investor group scheduled an emergency diligence call. My name was on the agenda, though they still didn't know exactly who I was. Carla attended on my behalf, poised, professional, devastatingly thorough. She didn't accuse, she simply asked questions. Can you confirm the early seed round was fully documented with the SEC? Why does the cap table show a 5% stake issued to an individual with no subsequent buyback clause? Were all related party transactions disclosed to the board? Damien had to sit through it, explaining, backpedaling, promising documents that didn't exist or had been lost in early disorganization. The investors grew quiet. One of the bigger funds requested a full forensic review, paid for by the company, of course. His valuation took its first public hit. A trade blog ran a short piece. Voss Tech delays Series B amid governance concerns. No names, no details, just enough to make the phones stop ringing. Then the social unraveling began. The leaks I'd seeded months earlier finally bloomed. Mark's article dropped on a Thursday morning. Careful, sourced, brutal in its restraint. Questions swirl around founders' early finances at rising fintech star. It quoted anonymous former colleagues, highlighted discrepancies in expense reporting, mentioned unusual family-linked investments that had never been fully disclosed. Damien's name trended for 6 hours. Not in the way he was used to. Comments poured in, some supportive, most skeptical. Old college friends messaged me privately asking if I was okay. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The truth was doing its work without me saying a word. Isabella's family felt it hardest. The Hawthorns were old money, protective of their name like it was fine china. Whispers reached them. Unstable groom, unstable company, unstable future. They requested a meeting with Damien, alone, no Isabella. I heard about it through a screenshot forwarded by Mark, Damien venting in a private founders chat. Her parents are grilling me like I'm some gold digger after everything I've built. Everything he'd built? I read it twice, felt nothing but cold clarity. Throughout all of it, I reflected. Nights on the porch, fireflies blinking, glass of iced tea sweating in my hand. I thought about the pain that started this, the phone call, the lawyer's letter, the drama llama laugh. I let myself feel it again, not to drown, but to remember why. Every tear I'd cried alone, every time I'd questioned if I'd failed as a mother, every moment I'd felt small and disposable. I didn't push the memories away anymore. I held them up to the light, examined them, and laid them down as fuel. The emotional payoff was starting to brew, not the explosive kind, but deep, steady, like the satisfaction of watching a garden you planted finally burst into bloom. Damien tried one last time to reach me. A voicemail at 2 a.m., voice thick, words slurred just enough to suggest whiskey. "Mom, I don't know what you want from me. Money? An apology? You're destroying everything. The wedding's falling apart. Investors are pulling out. Isabella's parents, they're talking about postponing. Please, just tell me what you want and I'll do it. I'm begging you." Begging. The word echoed as I listened in the dark kitchen, phone pressed to my ear. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. The trap was almost closed. The wedding was still technically on, but the guest list had shrunk. RSVPs turned to regrets. The Hawthorne Estates event planner was reportedly on standby for cancellation. Vendors whispered about deposits and penalties. Damien's world, the one he'd curated so carefully, was contracting around him, and the final collapse was so close I could taste it. One more move, one perfectly timed revelation, and everything he'd taken for granted would come crashing down in front of the people he most wanted to impress. I stood at my bedroom window that night, looking out at the quiet street. My reflection stared back, calm eyes, steady jaw, posture straight. The woman who had once sat on the kitchen floor sobbing over a lawyer's letter was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who had learned that silence can be louder than screaming, someone who understood that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply waits, patient, unforgiving, inevitable. The wedding day arrived like a storm that had been building for months. June 15th, Southampton, New York, the Hawthorne Estate. Acres of manicured lawns, white tents blooming like sails, the ocean glittering in the distance. Guests in linen and silk, champagne flutes catching the sunlight. Everything polished to perfection. Except the groom. I knew Damien hadn't slept. I'd seen the signs in the sparse updates that still trickled through my anonymous feeds. dark circles in a rare story, a canceled vendor post about last-minute adjustments, a society page note that the guest list had been streamlined for intimacy. But the wedding was still happening, barely. I hadn't responded to his 2 a.m. plea. No calls, no texts, no mercy. Instead, I'd prepared. Carla had everything timed perfectly. The final pieces, irrefutable evidence of embezzlement from early company funds, forged expense reports, personal charges routed through the business, were packaged with board minutes, bank statements, and my own sworn affidavit, all delivered by courier to the lead investor, the corporate counsel, and, crucially, the finance journalist Mark Hensley at 9 a.m. that morning. The story broke at noon. Not a tabloid scream, a measured, devastating piece in a major business outlet. Voss Tech founder accused of misappropriating funds. Major investor launches investigation. Names named, amounts listed, screenshots of transfers, some directly to Damien's personal accounts, others to vendors linked to Isabella's credit cards. The comments exploded. Shares in related funds dipped. Reporters swarmed the company's empty Manhattan office. And 300 miles away, on a perfect summer afternoon, the Hawthorne estate began to feel the shockwaves. I wasn't there yet, but I was coming. I'd booked a room at a small inn nearby 2 weeks earlier, under a variation of my maiden name. I'd bought a dress, elegant, understated navy silk that skimmed my figure without apology. Heels I could walk in, pearls my mother had given me on my own wedding day, long ago. I did my hair myself, makeup subtle but sharp. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who once begged for scraps. I saw Ilara Voss, whole, composed, unbreakable. I drove to the estate alone, windows down, ocean air whipping through the car. The guard at the gate checked the clipboard. No crashers allowed, but I simply handed him an envelope. Inside, a printed copy of my original investment agreement, my name bold on the shareholder line, and a note in my handwriting. Tell Mr. Voss his mother is here for the ceremony, as promised. He hesitated, then waved me through. The gravel drive crunched under my tires. Valets stared. Guests turned as I stepped out, whispers rippling like wind through grass. I walked toward the main tent, heels steady, chin high. Inside, the ceremony was about to begin. Rows of white chairs, floral arches dripping with peonies, a string quartet playing something soft and classical, guests murmuring, fanning themselves with programs. Damien stood at the altar, pale in his tuxedo, eyes bloodshot. He kept checking his phone, jaw clenched. Isabella wasn't in sight yet. Brides always make an entrance. I took a seat in the back row, on the groom's side, empty mostly. Many of his invited colleagues had suddenly become unavailable. A few heads turned. Recognition flickered, some from old photos, others from the article now burning up everyone's phones. Damien's best man noticed first, tapped his shoulder, whispered. Damien turned. Our eyes met across the tent. His face drained of what little color it had left. Shock, disbelief, then raw fear. He took a step forward like he might bolt, but the music swelled, the signal for the processional. Too late. The doors at the back opened. Isabella appeared on her father's arm, radiant in lace and diamonds, smile practiced and perfect. Until she saw me. Her step faltered, just for a second. Her father tightened his grip, urged her forward. Guests shifted uncomfortably, phones vibrating in purses and pockets, notifications from the articles still spreading. A low hum of conversation rose. Isabella's father stood up slowly in the front row, face thunderous. Her mother clutched her pearls. Damien let go of Isabella's hands. She stared at him. Damien, tell them it's not true. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The officiant cleared his throat nervously. Perhaps we should... No, Isabella's father said, voice cutting through the tent like a blade. This wedding is over. Gasps rippled. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Anger, humiliation, betrayal. She looked at Damien like he was a stranger. Then at me. I didn't flinch. Guests began standing, some leaving, some filming discreetly. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Damien stood frozen at the altar, alone now as his carefully constructed world collapsed in real time. Image cracked beyond repair, reputation in shreds, future unraveling in front of the people he'd most wanted to impress. I rose slowly from my seat, walked down the aisle, not as a beggar, not as an embarrassment, as the woman who had built him, and the woman he should never have underestimated. I stopped a few feet from him. He couldn't look at me. You wanted a fresh start. This is what it looks like when you burn the past without honoring it. His head snapped up, eyes wet, mouth working soundlessly. I turned and walked out. No one tried to stop me. Behind me, chaos bloomed, voices rising, Isabella's sobbing, her father barking orders to staff. But I didn't look back. The exposure was complete. His mask, gone, his control, shattered, and the anticipation that had been building for months finally crested. The fall was here, and it was spectacular. I didn't leave the estate right away. I walked out of the tent slowly, deliberately, letting the chaos bloom behind me like a fire I'd set and no longer needed to tend. The gravel path crunched under my heels as I made my way back to the parking area. Whispers followed me, some shocked, some curious, a few almost admiring. I didn't turn around. My car was waiting where the valet had left it. I slid inside, closed the door, and for the first time in months, let out a breath that felt like it came from the bottom of my soul. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I drove to the end of the long driveway, pulled over beneath a row of ancient oaks, and waited. I knew he would come. 15 minutes later, I saw him in the rearview mirror, Damien running down the path, tuxedo jacket gone, tie loose, shirt untucked. He looked like a man fleeing a burning building. When he spotted my car, he veered toward it, breathing hard. I lowered the window. He stopped a few feet away, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Sweat glistened on his forehead. His eyes, those eyes I used to kiss when he had nightmares, were wild, red-rimmed, desperate. "Mom," he gasped, "please, get out, talk to me." I stayed seated, engine off, hands resting lightly on the wheel. "I'm listening," I said. He straightened, looked around as if someone might be watching, then stepped closer. How could you do this?" His voice cracked. "Today, of all days, you destroyed everything." I met his gaze, calm, unwavering. "No, Damien, you did that." He shook his head, frantic. "I'm ruined. The investors are gone. The board's calling an emergency meeting Monday. Isabella," his voice broke on her name, "she left with her parents. The wedding's off. They're talking about suing me for embarrassment or something. I don't even know." I said nothing. He paced a tight circle, hands raking through his hair. "I get it, okay? I was wrong. I was cruel. I should have invited you. I should have treated you better. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just please tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell the journalists you made it up. Say it was a family dispute that got out of hand. I'll give you anything. The cabin, money, shares, whatever you want." Anything. The word hummed between us like smoke. I finally opened the door and stepped out. He stopped pacing. Hope flickered across his face. Raw, pathetic hope. I stood tall. The navy dress caught the breeze. My voice, when it came, was quiet, but carried the weight of every sleepless night, every tear, every moment I'd felt erased. "You think this is about the wedding?" I asked. He blinked. "Isn't it?" "No." I took one step toward him. "This is about the day you decided your mother was an embarrassment not worth a seat at your table. This is about the lawyer's letter threatening a restraining order against the woman who carried you for 9 months, who worked 3 jobs so you could have a future. This is about every time you looked at me and saw something to be ashamed of, instead of the person who gave you everything." His mouth opened, closed, no words. "This is about you believing you could discard me and keep all the good things I helped you build. The loans I co-signed, the savings I poured into your dreams, the nights I went without so you wouldn't have to." Tears started down his face now. He didn't wipe them away. "I didn't make any of this up, Damien. Every document, every transfer, every lie, it was all yours. I just made sure the right people finally saw it." He dropped to his knees on the gravel, actually dropped. "Mom, please, I'm begging you. I have nothing left." I looked down at him, the man I'd raised, now crumpled and small. For one heartbeat, the old love surged, the instinct to reach out, to comfort, to fix. But I didn't move. "You have exactly what you earned, the truth." He sobbed then, ugly, wrenching sounds that echoed off the trees. I let him. When the sobs quieted to shuddering breaths, I spoke again. "I'm not going to save you, Damien, not this time. You're going to face every consequence. The investigations, the lawsuits, the questions from people who thought you were someone you weren't. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn what it feels like to be treated as disposable." I turned back to the car. "Wait," he cried, scrambling to his feet. "You can't just leave me like this." I paused, hand on the door. "I'm not leaving you," I said without looking back. "You left me months ago. Today, I'm simply walking the same path you showed me." I got in, closed the door, and started the engine. In the mirror, I saw him standing in the middle of the driveway, arms hanging limp, watching me go. No chase this time, no more words. The power dynamic wasn't reversed in a dramatic flip. It was completely, irrevocably shattered. His arrogance, gone. His entitlement, exposed. His image, irreparable. And me? For the first time in my life, I felt the full weight of my own worth, not as a mother begging for recognition, but as a woman who had finally demanded it. As I pulled away from the estate, the ocean came into view, vast, calm, unbroken. Tears came then, not of pain, of release, deep, cleansing, overwhelming release. The revenge wasn't loud or cruel, it was surgical, precise, earned, and it felt like justice wrapped in sunlight. I drove with the windows down, salt air filling my lungs, and for the first time in years, I smiled, truly smiled. The boy I'd loved was gone. The man he'd become had finally met the consequences he'd spent a lifetime avoiding, and I was free. The weeks after the wedding that never happened passed in a strange, quiet blur. I drove home from Southampton the next morning, windows down, radio off, the ocean fading in the rearview mirror. No rush, no tears, just a deep, steady calm that felt like the first full breath I'd taken in years. The news cycle did its work without me. Headlines bloomed across business pages and tabloids alike. FinTech prodigy's wedding implodes amid fraud allegations. Hawthorne heiress left at altar as groom's empire crumbles. Photos from the estate, guests fleeing, Isabella being ushered into a black SUV, Damien alone under the floral arch, spread like wildfire. Vostech's board suspended him pending investigation. Investors filed suits. The Series B round evaporated. By August, the company was in receivership, assets sold off to cover debts. Damien's name became a cautionary tale in startup circles, brilliant, ambitious, undone by hubris and sloppy books. He tried to fight it at first, lawyers, PR firms, interviews where he painted himself as the victim of a vindictive family member, but the evidence was ironclad. Every transfer, every lie, documented in his own handwriting or digital trail. The narrative flipped fast. He went from golden boy to pariah. Isabella's family settled quietly. Rumor had it, a hefty NDA and return of gifts. She was spotted in Europe by fall, new boyfriend in tow, never mentioning his name again. And Damien? He disappeared from public view. Last I heard, through Carla, who kept tabs for legal reasons, he'd moved back to Chicago, a small apartment in a nondescript building. No job, no network left. Creditors circling. Friends who'd once clamored for invites now crossing the street to avoid him. He wrote me letters, 3 of them. The first was angry, accusations, blame, threats of lawsuits that never materialized. The second was desperate, pleas for money, for help finding work, for any lifeline. The third, The third was different. Handwritten. No return address. Mom, I hate what I became. I hate that I hurt you. I hate that it took losing everything to see how much you gave me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know I'm sorry, truly. And I'm trying to be better, one day at a time. I love you. Damien. I read it on the porch at dusk, fireflies starting their dance. My hands didn't shake. My throat didn't tighten. I folded it neatly, slipped it into the drawer with the old photos, graduation, first apartment, Christmases long past. I didn't write back. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned. But I didn't burn with them anymore. The money came next. My shares in Vostech, diluted but still substantial, were bought out in the liquidation. The student loans were repaid under court order, with interest. The private loans, too. The lake cabin remained mine. I never signed the deed. For the first time in my life, I had security, real security. I sold the house in Chicago, the one filled with memories both beautiful and brutal, and bought a small cottage up north, near the water. White clapboard, wraparound porch, garden already blooming when I moved in. I filled it with books, soft blankets, art I chose for no one but myself. I traveled. Italy in the fall, vineyards and ancient streets, Paris in winter, lights reflecting on the Seine, places I dreamed of when I was too tired to dream. I made new friends, joined a book club, took painting classes, laughed louder and more often than I had in decades. People asked sometimes about the headlines, the scandal, the sun. I'd smile gently and say, "That's a long story, but it taught me something important. My worth was never his to decide." And that was all. 1 year later, almost to the day, I sat on my new porch watching the sunset bleed orange across the lake, a glass of wine in hand, a book open on my lap, unread. I thought about the woman who once sat on a kitchen floor, convinced she was nothing without her son's approval. I thought about the pain that had carved me hollow, then filled me with fire. I thought about karma, not as vengeance, but as balance. Love should never cost your dignity. Sacrifice should never mean erasure. Respect is not optional in family, it's the foundation. And justice, true justice, doesn't always come with noise and fury. Sometimes it comes as quiet as a mother walking away from a life that no longer honored her. I raised my glass to the horizon, to the boy I'd loved with every piece of me, to the man who'd forgotten where he came from, to the woman I'd become when I finally remembered. The light faded. Stars blinked on, one by one. I breathed in the cool evening air, full and deep, and I knew without doubt I was enough. Always had been. It just took losing everything false to see it clearly. Never underestimate a mother's love. It can build empires, and when betrayed, it can bring them down.